We're going to talk now about one of my favorite, well, the most exciting part for me of planting, and that is when you start planting your tiny seeds and you're going to start your seedlings. There's a lot of different tools and things, so I'm going to walk you through what I feel is just an easy, simple way to do it so that you can start your own seedlings. What you're going to need to start is a tray. Here I've got a little bit larger than the standard tray. Most are about 10 by 20 inches, but what we call the cells, which are the little squares in the inside, those can vary from really tiny to larger like this. So let me show you a different version. Okay. This right here is a 72 cell tray. This is your standard one that most people will use. There's also one that's 120. And what that means, I think when I first started planting, I didn't realize what that meant. Each little tray is gonna be a little plant that actually sprouts. So if you think about it, if you plant this whole thing and they all sprout, you have 72 plants. So that's a lot. You can really start a lot of seeds in a very small amount of space. So you don't have a greenhouse, totally fine. You can do this. Let's say you've got a really good window at home that gets a lot of sun for most of the day. You can put this by there and you can start your seeds there. And this is enough to grow a lot of food for a lot of people. So just keep in mind, that's what that means in terms of the cell tray size. For demonstration purposes, I'm gonna go for a bigger one. Why would you do a bigger one versus a smaller one? For example, if you're gonna start something like cucumbers or melons or pumpkins, things that really start to grow quick and sprout big, you want to give them a little larger space like this one, which will allow them to start growing a little bigger before they're ready to plant into the ground. If you're doing something smaller like a pepper or even a tomato where they're not going to grow wild and all over the place, you can use these smaller ones. Same goes for flowers, things like that. Lastly, rule of thumb on your cell trays, let's say you're starting these a lot before your frost date, you're not sure, maybe you're gonna have these a long time in your home or your greenhouse before you plant them in the ground. Go for a larger size because that'll give your roots more space, it'll give your plant more space to grow before you actually take it out and plant it in the ground. We're gonna show you on this. So you wanna start always with a really good soil mixture, because the key is in the soil, right? If the soil has all the nutrients, then your little seedlings are gonna have all they need to germinate well and start. We have videos that talk about the soil recipe and different things, so I won't touch on that, but good soil is a start. Now, I like to first moisten my soil so it's nice and a little bit wet so that there's not stuff floating around like this. So I'm gonna wet it a little bit here. And we'll show you. That's a lot of water. Okay, let's let that sit for a moment. All right. This is my favorite part, is where you get your hands dirty. It's actually really fun to, you can use gloves, you know, but if you feel like you're gonna wet it too much like I did, you can go for a much fancier method like this spritzer, or just use a spray bottle and do this, and you can moisten your soil. All right. We've got those ready. Here we go. Be good if I could wipe them on some. This is my favorite tomato to grow. This is called a yellow brandywine. It's an heirloom variety of tomatoes. These are the ones you'll see in the store, and they're like kind of the big, they don't have the prettiest shape. They're misshapen, but it's like a big tomato. That's what these are. These seeds are from Baker's Creek. I love them. They've always had really good germination rates for me, which means I plant all of these little squares, most of them sprout. So I'm gonna go with that. Find yourself a pen, a pencil, or this is an actual little tool. You don't need to have this. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna poke a little hole into each cell. You don't want to go super deep. You want that seed to be kind of, each little packet will tell you the specific depth for the seed. For example, this actually has inches and numbers here, so I could kind of see how deep I'm going. If you're nervous about it, maybe get a little tool that has that for you, but you can also use your finger This doesn't have to be precise, okay? But you can tell over here on this one, it was a little drier and stuff started moving around. That's why I like to moisten it so you really have your little hole and you can see it. All right, so I'm going in just a little past the surface level. You want to be really careful when you open your seeds. So most seed packets, depending where they're from, come with a fair amount of seeds. So this is only gonna, oh man, I have to do fast math. 9, this is 18 little tomato plants. There's probably more seeds than that in here. Don't waste your seeds. You can store them even after you've opened the packet, so just be careful when you're opening, okay? So I like to rip it close to the top so that I can, most seed packets, you can look at the details of how deep to put it in the ground, kind of when it's ready to plant, all these different things. All right, here we go. These are so small. See how tiny those are? It's the seeds. I know this sounds like, to me, I didn't know some of this. It's the seed, you know, when you cut a tomato open and you see those little seeds, that's essentially what you dry and you're planting. Some have huge ones like cucumbers, tomatoes are little. In each little cell, you really want to do not more than like 1 to 2 seeds, because if I plop all of these on there, all of those could turn into a plant. Well, there is not going to be enough space in this little cell for all those plants to get the nutrients they need and their roots to grow. So I'm going to reach in and literally grab 2, and that's hard sometimes when they're super little. I'm going to plop 2 just in hopes that one of them is going to germinate well and it's going to take. Now, if 2 do sprout, I can later pull one and transplant it into another little cell. All right, here we go. So it's hard to grab little tiny seeds, y'all. I feel like I'm so about 2 little seeds per of whatever it is you're planting. Most any plant or flower you can start like this. I have left over. We're going to put those safely back in here. I will close this really tightly, probably with a paper clip, and then this will go in a cool, dark place to be used later. Okay, you can use your finger, you can use a little tool. You're just gonna cover lightly, okay, right here. Now in this case, I've already moistened the soil, so I'm not gonna wet it much more. You don't wanna use for the first probably 7 to 10 days till the first little plant emerges. You don't want to just like hard water, like you don't want to take a hose to this, because those little seedlings are surface level and it could just displace them and mess it up. So you kind of do want to use a spray bottle for that first bit. Okay, I've covered them, so you can just make sure they're well and moistened. Ooh, there we go. And so if you don't have an environment like a greenhouse where it's constantly warm and that kind of thing, you want to be able to kind of create that warmth and constant moisture for that little seed to germinate. So this isn't quite the right light for this, but you're gonna cover it for the first probably a week till you see that little plant emerge. Once it does, you're gonna take this off because it no longer needs that warmth. You just wanna keep it like uniform heat in there for that little plant to germinate. So we've done that, but now just some good bookkeeping. You're gonna grab your little paper where you are gonna keep track of everything. I'm gonna write down that this is yellow brandy wine. Start date, you're gonna put whatever that is here. Germination rate will be how many. I planted 18 of these. Well, did 18 sprout or not? You're gonna put that there. And then I'm gonna put the day they actually sprouted on here once they do. And I'm gonna put the day I transplanted them into my garden. So this is just a great way to keep track. And last but not least, because if you do a lot of them, you're gonna forget. We're gonna put this yellow brandy wine. These kind of like, you can use popsicle sticks, you can use actual garden markers, but these work great. We can stick them in there. Once you take the lid off, you can really just leave them in there, but then you're gonna know exactly what you've planted. And that's just a simple, easy way to do everything, and hopefully you can do this and start growing your seedlings ASAP.